Hello and welcome to Megan's Minute. I'm your host, Megan Lavin, owner of the recipe site AllergyAwesomeness.com. Together with Allergic Living, we discuss topics that affect those with food allergies. Today, we're going to discuss a new and potentially troubling ingredient, wheat starch. So what is wheat starch? As you know, food has different components to it. Fats, proteins, starches. In fact, those of us who already bake gluten-free are familiar with several starches like tapioca and potato. Those are already super common. Now, however, there's a new technique of washing away the gluten from the wheat and leaving only the wheat starch behind. The wheat starch is now being added to some gluten-free flour blends. I first noticed this trend a few years ago in some European recipes. They were using a brand called Caputo. I wondered when this trend would hit the US, and it seems it has, through a brand called King Arthur. It's a very popular brand for gluten-free blends, and now they have a lot of blends, but now they use it in their pizza and their bread flours, are what I've been able to find. I have two people in my family this could potentially affect. There's my husband, who chooses to just not eat gluten, and so therefore he doesn't have to worry about cross-contact, and he can eat that wheat starch-containing flour. However, there's my son, and he has a severe wheat allergy. In fact, just last year we tried doing an oral challenge to wheat, and he ended up with a systemic reaction that required 2 shots of epinephrine. He cannot have wheat starch. In the past, when we'd eat out, we'd always just start by ordering from the gluten-free menu, right? Why? Because, well, gluten-free used to mean wheat-free as well, and yes, it's more restrictive, but it was just a generally understood phrase. Now that there's this new form of starch that may have low levels of wheat protein, we can no longer sadly rely on this umbrella term. What worries me is that the coloring and the packaging on the text of King Arthur's 2 flours, so like their measure for measure, which is still wheat-free and we still use, and then their new blend that includes wheat starch, look very similar, other than the photo, but if you're in a rush, you may not notice it. It's not until you actually flip it over and look on the back do you see the words contains wheat. As a food allergy mom, I know to read labels every single time, but sometimes you're in a rush, and so I just feel an urgency to get the word out for those with a wheat allergy, as I worry some people may just blindly trust brands they know like King Arthur, grab it off the shelf, not turn it around, and many won't know they need to watch out for this, so share it with your wheat allergy friends. I actually spoke out about this on my Instagram and TikTok, and even those in the celiac community seem torn on the topic. I received many comments from people saying like they love these new blends, and then there were some people who said I'd never dare eat one, even with the certified gluten-free logo. And for those not familiar, to be certified gluten-free, you have to have lower than 20 parts per million. For those with celiac, an expert called the gluten-free watchdog recommends not eating the wheat starch unless it carries a gluten-free brand logo. Her testing of wheat starch has shown that some brands not certified gluten-free contain wheat above the 20 parts per million threshold. Talk to your own doctor for your own situations. Thankfully for those with wheat allergies, because of the U.S. food allergy labeling law, FALCPA, if something has wheat in it, it must be shown on a package's ingredient list. So as wheat starch will probably continue to grow in popularity, we'll need to double check our labels carefully, but at least we have that law going for us to help us notice it. For those of us with wheat allergies or those with celiac who don't feel comfortable with wheat starch, I do worry that this will only be the beginning. Wheat starch may start to creep into things more and more. Bakeries, restaurants will need to be ever vigilant when buying those gluten-free items. My other big concern is with restaurants. Because of untrained servers and wait staff, they may not understand the difference between wheat-free and gluten-free, and they may confuse it. It's now going to take multiple questions and digging to ensure that what you're eating is truly wheat-free from here on out. I have one recent example. When we went on our cruise, which by the way, I cover in another Allergic Living video, we decided we would try to order, saying our son has a wheat allergy, instead of our typical gluten-free. We figured since the servers on the cruise have these long contracts, they would be very familiar with their menu and trained on any allergens. We did this because my son can have other gluten grains like oats and barley and rye, and we were hoping that by saying what he actually has, a wheat allergy, instead of gluten-free, it could possibly give him some more options. Well, you know where this is going. One waiter brought my son a roll, and it looked just like the regular rolls. He assured us that it was wheat-free. Thankfully, my son went with his gut and didn't dare eat it. Finally, we were able to snag another waiter to double check, and he said, "No way is that wheat-free." We finally realized what the first waiter must have been thinking. He thought it meant whole wheat, as in a darker grain of bread. Many people don't seem to realize, if they've never had to read labels, that white bread is still wheat. We were so glad my son didn't have a reaction while we were in the middle of the ocean, and it just goes to show even industry professionals still aren't well trained to understand the difference between wheat-free and gluten-free. And honestly, I think they just think they go hand in hand, which they used to, but now it's just getting muddier and muddier. I know that this can feel like a bit of a loss. It seems like just one more thing we have to worry about and we have to be vigilant about. But we can do this. We will have to continue to do our part to educate, and we're going to have to protect ourselves by asking questions, reading labels, and of course, always having our epinephrine with us at all times. Our health and safety are worth it. We are worth it. We can do this. Be sure to also read the companion article that I wrote on Allergic Living's website. It will be linked below, where I give some close calls even some of my own readers have had to the wheat starch they unknowingly ate. It's pretty crazy. To see the cruise video or other topics we've covered, which is a whole host of topics, be sure to go to Allergic Living's YouTube channel or their IGTV. Be safe out there. We'll see you next time.